Forget the crown, forget the throne, forget everything you think you know about who actually holds the power inside the British monarchy right now. Here's what nobody is saying out loud. Diana is gone, but her son isn't. And William has spent the last 2 years doing something so quiet, so methodical, so surgical that by the time Camilla realizes the full shape of it, it will already be done. On July 24, 2024, Daily Telegraph published a document, a specific publicly filed document from the Duchy of Cornwall's integrated annual report, contained a line item which received roughly 48 hours of coverage and then disappeared entirely from the conversation. The line item read, "At 31st March 2024, there was nil remaining payable to Mrs. Elliot in respect of these. Annabel Elliot, Queen Camilla's younger sister, interior designer employed by the Duchy of Cornwall since 2005, hired personally by the then Prince of Wales following his marriage to Camilla. Anywhere between £19,000 and £82,000 annually across nearly 2 decades of work on Duchy properties across Cornwall, the Isles of Scilly. Nil gone from a filed document, no statement, no dispute. No explanation beyond sources telling the Telegraphs that William would no longer employ her, and that it was no reflection on her work. That's not gossip. That's a financial record filed with the Duchy of Cornwall, and it is the first piece of a pattern that, when you add the Ray Mill house transfer, Princess Anne's positioning over the York sisters, the sovereign grant mechanics, and the documented succession timeline, tells a story about Camilla's position that is considerably more serious than anything the tabloid feud coverage has been willing to name directly. Give me 90 seconds before you click away, because the story being told in every other channel about the Anne and William versus Camilla dynamic is the version with unnamed sources and vented confrontations. And that version is covering up the more important story underneath it. The more important story is in the documents. Duchy of Cornwall Annual Report, the Land Registry records filed in February 2026, the Regency Act 1953, the Sovereign Grant Act 2011, succession planning timeline documented by named royal correspondents across 12 months of reporting. 5 revelations, one more structurally significant than the last. And by the time we reach Revelation 4, you will understand why a property transfer registered quietly at Land Registry in early 2026 is the most telling document in this entire story, and why nobody is connecting it to everything else. This channel has under 10 subscribers, no sponsors, and no royal PR relationships of any kind. This means nothing about how this story is framed has been softened for anyone's benefit. Stay with me. The answer to why this matters now, specifically in June 2026, comes from 2 converging timelines that have been running parallel for 18 months and are now beginning to intersect. First timeline is medical. In December 2025, Buckingham Palace confirmed that King Charles III is reducing cancer treatment in 2026. The accompanying statement made a specific distinction the mainstream coverage largely glossed over. His cancer is not in remission. Treatment is being reduced. The disease has not gone. Multiple named royal correspondents, including Royal Insider Tom Sykes writing for the Daily Beast and Rob Shooter's Shooter Scoop Substack citing a senior courtier directly, documented that the palace is quietly preparing William to step up fast. The courtier quoted as saying the illusion of perfect health is collapsing. The second timeline is institutional. Since September 2022, when William inherited the title Duke of Cornwall, and with its sole control of a royal estate generating approximately £30 million annually, holding over £1 billion in land property and investment assets, practical reality of who controls the financial infrastructure of the monarchy has been shifting in one direction and one direction only. Put those 2 timelines next to each other. Statement A. The palace's public position throughout 2025 and 2026 has been that King Charles remains active sovereign, that no abdication is planned, and that the succession question does not currently arise in any immediate or urgent form. Record B. The palace's own briefings, documented by named correspondents, describe accelerated succession planning, a monarch whose health is described as precarious in senior briefings, and a prince who is, in the words of one palace source, already king unofficially, with full unilateral control of a £1 billion estate and a documented track record of using that control to reshape institutional landscape around him. The math fails, and the person caught most directly in that gap between the public narrative and the institutional reality is Queen Camilla, whose position is built on a relationship to the sovereign that changes materially the moment the sovereign changes and who is watching the two people with the most personal reasons to accelerate that change doing exactly that from two different directions simultaneously. Before the 5 revelations quickly, this channel is under 10 subscribers. That is accurate. So sponsors, no Patreon, no royal media contacts who brief me on what the acceptable narrative is this week, just publicly filed documents, land registry records, Duchy annual reports, and named source reporting from journalists with track records. Next week, this channel is going somewhere nobody in this space wants to go, which is a detailed look at what the Sovereign Grant Act 2011 actually says about Camilla's financial position after the succession, and specifically what nil remaining payable looks like, applied not to a sister's interior design contract, but to an entire institutional support structure. That video will not stay up for long, so subscribe now. And now, back to the case file. Revelation 1. The Duchy document and what it actually says, July 24, 2024. The Daily Telegraph reports on the Duchy of Cornwall's integrated annual report for the financial year ending March 2024. Specific language in that report is worth reading precisely, because precision is what distinguishes this from opinion. 2023 annual report had included a line confirming that the Duchy paid Annabel Elliot, described as the 24th Duke of Cornwall's sister-in-law, £19,625 for fees and commission, and £12,316 for furniture and furnishings for Duchy holiday accommodation, offices, and nursery, in the normal course of business and on an arm's-length basis. The 2024 report contained one line where those payments had previously appeared. Read, at 31st March 2024, there was nil remaining payable to Mrs. Elliot in respect of these. Sources confirmed to the Telegraph that William would no longer employ Elliot, while specifying that it was no reflection on her work, adding that her extensive interiors work across the estate is considered complete and that current staff have learned sufficiently from her. Let me put this plainly. Annabel Elliot had been hired in 2005, the year Charles married Camilla, not competed with any external applicants for the role at the time. Telegraph documented that she earned several £100,000 for her services over nearly 2 decades, working across the Duchy's rental holiday cottages in Cornwall, Wales, the Isles of Scilly, overseeing the refurbishment of a 20-bedroom pub in the Poundbury development in Dorset. At the same time, the Duchy report confirmed Elliot's removal. The Royal Observer reported that William had brought in 2 new advisory appointments, the Duchy Council: Harry Aubrey Fletcher, the godfather of Prince Louis, and William Van Cutsem, the godfather of Prince George, loyal specifically and exclusively to William's personal circle. Statement A. Palace presented the Elliot departure as a straightforward business decision reflecting completed work and staff training, with no connection to family dynamics. Record B. The Duchy of Cornwall Integrated Annual Report, a publicly filed financial document, shows payments to Camilla's sister going from tens of thousands of pounds annually to nil in the same period that 2 of William's closest personal friends were appointed to the Duchy Council in advisory roles. That's not a family dispute. That's a documented financial restructuring that tells you exactly who William considers part of the institutional future. Think about that. That was the opening move. What Williams did next was considerably more layered. Revelation 2. Pattern across both fronts. The Elliot removal from the Duchy payroll is documented and verifiable. What the pattern around it suggests, when placed alongside Princess Anne's positioning over the past several months, is that 2 entirely separate pressure points on Camilla's institutional position are operating simultaneously from 2 entirely separate directions. Princess Anne's front concerns the York sisters, and it is documented across multiple named reporting sources evils from late May and early June 2026. Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie have been absent from a series of high-profile royal events across 2026. Reports confirmed in March that the sisters would not be included in the Royal Ascot festivities. Both women were also absent from the Chelsea Flower Show, an event they had attended regularly in previous years. No official explanation has been offered. Palace insiders quoted by AOL and Yahoo Entertainment in early June 2026 stated that Princess Anne has grown increasingly frustrated with what she sees as the sisters being pushed to the margins of royal life. Critically, the sourcing goes further. Palace insiders stated that Anne believes Queen Camilla has strongly influenced how people within royal circles view the York sisters. Anne does not believe King Charles would normally take such a strict stance toward his nieces. The insider quote on record says this level of coldness is not in her brother's character. Statement A. Exclusion of Beatrice and Eugenie from royal events has been presented publicly as a natural consequence of the ongoing fallout from controversies involving their father, with no specific individual identified as responsible. Record B. Named palace sources reported across multiple outlets including IB Times UK and Reality T, citing Heat magazine sources, identify Queen Camilla as the influence behind the York sisters' treatment, Princess Anne in active documented disagreement with that position and in reported tension with Camilla as a result. That is two simultaneous institutional pressures on Camilla's position, documented in filed reports and named source journalism, verging from the two people in the royal family with the most different but equally compelling personal motivations to push them. It's becoming a bit of an Olympic sport at this point, the number of simultaneous fronts on which Camilla's position is being quietly contested. Both of those fronts pale in comparison to what the land registry shows happened to Ray Milhouse in early 2026. Revelation 3. Ray Milhouse and what the land registry actually shows February 2026. Land registry documents, reported first by the Daily Mail and subsequently confirmed by Royal Central, Hello Magazine, and GB News, show that Queen Camilla has quietly transferred ownership of Ray Milhouse, her private Wiltshire residence of nearly 30 years, out of her personal name. The property, located in the village of Lacock, was purchased by Camilla in 1996 for £850,000 following her divorce from Andrew Parker Bowles. Is the property she described in 2025 during an appearance at the Sandringham Flower Show as the best therapy in the world, speaking about the garden she had cultivated there. It is where she sought solace after Queen Elizabeth's death. 4 is where her daughter Laura hosted her wedding reception in 2006. The land registry documents show the property has been registered in the names of her son-in-law Harry Lopes and financier Jake Irwin, understood to be acting on behalf of Camilla's children, Laura Lopes and Tom Parker Bowles. Royal Central reported it clearly. Camilla has quietly transferred ownership of her private Wiltshire residence to members of her family, ending nearly 3 decades of personal association with the property. Now, this transfer is not sinister on its face. Transferring property to children for inheritance planning purposes is common. It is entirely legal. The palace has not commented on it. What makes it significant in the context of this case file is the specific timing and what surrounds it. In March 2025, King Charles separately spent £3,750,000 purchasing the Old Mill estate, property directly next door to Ray Mill House, sharing its private lane through a company called Frieza Nominees Limited, registered at Buckingham Palace. Charles bought the adjacent property to prevent it from becoming a wedding venue, according to reporting. Then, 11 months later, Camilla transferred Ray Mill itself to her children. The sequence is specific and documented. Charles secures the adjacent property in March 2025. Camilla transfers Ray Mill to her children in February 2026. In that same February 2026, Charles's cancer treatment is being reduced, William is being quietly prepared to step up, and the Duchy has already operated for nearly 2 years without Annabelle Elliott on the payroll. That is not coincidence of timing. That is a woman conducting orderly estate planning at exactly the moment the institutional landscape around her is shifting fastest. Think about that. Revelation 4. The legal mechanism that makes this irreversible here is the constitutional and legal framework. Nobody in the mainstream coverage is placing alongside these financial and property moves. It is the framework that makes Camilla's current institutional position structurally more fragile than it publicly appears. Under the Regency Act 1953, if the sovereign becomes incapacitated or unable to perform royal duties, a regent is appointed by law. Regent would be Prince William, and a regent exercising sovereign functions is, for all institutional purposes, the functional sovereign. His decisions carry sovereign authority. His household controls sovereign resources. Under the Sovereign Grant Act 2011, funding that flows to the royal household, including the support for working royals including the Queen Consort, is allocated from the sovereign's grant, which is tied to the civil list structure and administered through the sovereign's household. It's not a personal settlement independent of institutional structure. It is public money flowing through a sovereign relationship. Critical legal consequence is this. Camilla's access to official residences, her staffing, her operational budget, her patronage infrastructure, her public role are all downstream of her relationship to the sovereign. Sovereign Grant Act does not include a standalone provision guaranteeing a queen consort's financial position independent of the sovereign's status. Under a regency scenario where William holds sovereign authority, question of what Camilla's resource base looks like has no clear statutory answer, and the palace has never publicly addressed it. Named palace source told AOL's royal coverage that when William becomes king, Camilla will be effectively at Kate's mercy in terms of her perks and influence within the firm. That is a named source using the word mercy, which is a precise institutional description, not a metaphor. Clarence House is estimated at approximately £72 million. Highgrove is estimated at approximately $39 million. Those are the assets Camilla is understood to potentially inherit, which are significant by any ordinary measure and completely inadequate as a substitute for the institutional position she currently occupies as queen consort with full sovereign grant support behind her. The legal mechanism is not dramatic. It's the quiet operation of statute law designed for a different scenario, applied to a situation the legislation never anticipated. Queen consort navigating a regency foreseen by a prince whose childhood was directly shaped by her relationship with his father. That is not reversible by a press release or a patronage appointment. It is baked into the architecture of constitutional law. Revelation 5. Financial position Camilla cannot change from inside here is the number that sits at the end of this entire chain of documented events. It is the number that makes everything else make sense. The Duchy of Cornwall generated approximately £30 million in income in the year ending 2025, according to Duchy financial disclosures. The total asset value of the Duchy sits above £1 billion. William controls all of it. No consultation required with Charles. No approval needed from Camilla. The Duke of Cornwall's control of the Duchy is his sole personal authority under letters patent, and it has been his since September 8, 2022. The sovereign grant for 2026 and 2027 is projected at £137.9 million according to the House of Commons Library Research briefing published in December 2025. That is the public money funding the working monarchy, including the Queen Consort's operation. Place those two numbers alongside what is documented. William controls £1 billion estate and $30 million in annual Duchy income. Has used that control to remove Camilla's sister from the payroll, replace her with his own personal network, redirect Duchy-connected philanthropic resources toward the causes his mother championed during her lifetime, specifically mental health, homelessness, and HIV awareness, which Diana made her own during the years when, as William knows from personal lived experience, the institution she belonged to was working to contain her. Camilla's queen consort operation is funded from the sovereign grant, which flows from an institution that William will eventually control as sovereign, and which he already influences as its next in line. Her private property base, with Ray Mill now transferred to her children, consists of whatever she inherits from Charles plus whatever institutional access William permits her going forward. Statement A. Camilla is a reigning queen consort with a secure institutional position, over 100 charitable patronages, access to royal residences, public role that has steadily grown in credibility and public acceptance since 2005. Record B. Her sister is off the Duchy payroll as of March 2024 per a filed financial document. Private personal retreat has been transferred to her children per land registry records filed February 2026. Institutional framework around her position changes materially under a regency or succession, and the person who controls the financial architecture of her future is a man who grew up watching what the affair she conducted with his father did to his mother. The math fails. Let me slow down here, because underneath all the financial documents and the land registry records and the constitutional frameworks, there is a human reality that the coverage keeps converting into a power struggle narrative when the actual texture of it is considerably more complicated than that. In 2025, at the Sandringham Flower Show, Camilla was asked about her garden at Ray Mill House. She said, "These are her recorded words. Yes, I do enjoy it. I'm very proud of my veg. It's the best therapy in the world. We haven't had any rain though. I've never done so much watering in my life." That comment was made in 2025. In February 2026, property she was talking about was transferred out of her name. Ray Mill House is where Camilla lived for 7 years following her divorce, where her daughter's wedding reception was held, where Charles helped to design the garden in the years before they married. She described it as the best therapy in the world and transferred it to her children within 12 months of saying so. In the background of that transfer, Charles spent £3,750,000, ensuring that the property directly next to Ray Mill would not become a wedding venue. He bought the adjacent property to protect the one his wife was in the process of giving away. That is not strategy. That is two people conducting estate planning in real time around a future that neither of them is describing publicly, that both of them, in their documented financial decisions, appear to be preparing for. No palace press release changes what that pattern of decisions actually represents. Here is the verdict. Requires holding two things that appear contradictory at the same time. Queen Camilla is a genuinely effective queen consort. Patronage network of over 100 organizations. Her consistency across 2 decades in areas that high-profile figures routinely avoid. Conduct through a reign that began with significant public skepticism. That record belongs to her and deserves to be stated plainly. The institutional position that record built is documented in financial records and land registry filings and succession briefings. It's considerably more vulnerable than public presentation suggests. The mistake was structural and was made long before any of this became visible. The institution never designed a framework that protects Camilla's position independently of her relationship to the sovereign. Sovereign's health and the heir's documented use of his institutional authority have been converging for 18 months. That is not a PR problem, that is a constitutional architecture problem. A magazine profile or a patronage announcement cannot solve a constitutional architecture problem. Here's the question I want you to sit with, as I genuinely want your answer in the comments. Charles spent £3.75 million in March 2025 to buy the property adjacent to Ray Mill House. 11 months later, Camilla transferred Ray Mill itself to her children. Those two decisions, taken together, suggest both of them are thinking about the same future at the same time. So the question is this: does Charles know the full shape of what William is building institutionally? And has he made a decision about whether to resist it? Because a man who protected his wife's retreat with nearly £4 million, then watched her transfer that retreat to their children, is either choosing not to fight what his son is doing, or has reached a conclusion about his capacity to fight it. Those are very different things. The distinction between them changes everything about what this story means. Drop your answer below. This story is not over. Next chapter starts inside the sovereign grant allocation process, where the quiet arithmetic of who funds what on whose authority will become possible to ignore once the succession timeline stops being a distant prospect. Documents are already telling us it is closer than the public narrative admits.